Well, Perdita, thank you so much for joining me here on the Entrepreneurial Success Podcast. We've already had so many great conversations before this recording, so I'm really excited to share everything here with the audience. Before we get started, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, I first have to say, Henriette, how thrilled I am to be here speaking with you today. I'm so excited. So thank you so much for having me. And yes, my name is Perdita Andrews. I am a professional English and public speaking coach. And my ultimate goal in working with my clients is really to help them have their voices heard. And that means working with them on anything from fear of public speaking, which is a big one, to helping them with their text, punch it up and give it some more pizzazz, to working in a digital format, whether it's leading a Zoom meeting or like videos for their websites. And I'm based in Paris, so I do very often work with people who are speaking English as a second or third or sometimes fourth language. But I also work with native speakers as well.
And I love that because the first conversation you and I had, had this conversation because obviously English is my second language as well. And being a public speaker and showing up consistently online, it's one of those things that do create this little bit of fear inside of you, that anxiety as to, oh my gosh, what if I say things wrong? What if my tenses are wrong? Which always is wrong, but I'm okay with that now. And that's what we're going to talk about here, is about how that stress and anxiety when it comes to speaking public or either on video or online, how that kind of stops you. But you're going to give us some great tips as to how to get over that. But before we get there, I always say everybody's got a unique story to share because you're unique as you are. You've got your own unique story, your own journey that you're going on. How did that start for you and how did it kind of develop into where you are now and what you're doing with your business?
Wow, yes. I have had a very long journey in terms of kilometers, if you will. I was born in Canada. I've moved around quite a bit. So I've lived, I think, in 8 different places now. I've lived in Canada, I've lived in the United States, I've lived in England, now in France. I moved to New York when I was 18. I went to a theater school and I did a lot of training in with my voice, especially performance and working with my voice. And I was also trained as a dancer, so the physical aspect of that as well. And when I realized that the life of an actor was too nomadic for me, I decided to go back to school, and I went back to school for journalism and radio broadcasting. So I was continuing to work in the presentation kind of format with my voice and stuff like that. I can't believe it, but it's 8 years ago now. I just decided to go on an adventure one day. An adventure across the ocean, which brought me to France, completely unplanned and also unprepared. I had no job. I didn't know anyone. I'd never even been here before. It was my first time. And now here we are 8 years later. And I did what so many expats do, which was I needed a job and I started teaching English. And I never would have thought, after going to theater school and journalism school, that I would be teaching English, only because it's such a circuitous journey. And I started just really connecting with the people I was working with, and they started asking me if I could give them private lessons. And so I did that for a little while. And then I realized that with all the performing background I have and the voice work, that I could blend all those two things together and help people to really present themselves in a speaking kind of a way and maintain their true selves at the same time. So,
oh my gosh,
kind of fell backwards into it. Really,
it's amazing. And I love your story because it also shows that it's a journey that you went on. It's not something that you woke up one day and it's like, right, I'm going to start teaching English and I'm going to help people with English and helping them, build that confidence to speak in front of a crowd, whether it's 2 people or 2,000 people. It's that kind of journey that you're going on where you also finding out what you can deliver and what people want. And with your skills and your strengths, that's what you brought forth, and that's how your business developed. So I love the fact that you bring that in then. For the audience, I want you to listen to this because everybody's journey is unique, okay? Like I said, you're not just waking up one morning and go, oh, this is the business that I'm going to run now. It is always going to change. The journey that you're on will take you from one place to another. And as you're traveling, you will change. Your skills will change, your strengths will change, but it's how you move and how you move forward in order to help other people that's going to help you grow and help you make a success of your business as well. And I think this kind of works in very nicely into what we want to talk about, which is public speaking. Whether it is online, whether it's in front of a crowd, like you say, between either it's 1 or 2 people that you're talking to or 2,000 people, that stress and that anxiety still is there. It's something that kind of holds so many people back from just stepping outside of their comfort zone and making something big happen. So talk to us a little bit about that. Talk to us about some examples that you've seen as well and how to get over that stress, anxiety, fear aspects just to put yourself out there and become a little bit more visible.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I also want to touch on that just sparked for me as you were speaking is that a lot of times people see public speaking, they see those words and they think they have to be giving a TED talk or they have to be at a conference, and they don't think about how you could be leading an internal meeting. And that is also still public speaking. And what happens is people don't feel like, it's a bit difficult to explain, but on that side of things, people don't feel like they can ask for help because they don't think they should need help because it's not a TED talk or it's not but as you pointed out, the stress is the same. The foundations of the anxiety, the way it manifests itself in the mind and in the body is the same thing. The fear is the same. And so I'm just really glad that you pointed that out, because I definitely have had my clients come to me and say, oh, I have this, internal thing that I have to do, but that's not really what you do. You wouldn't want to help me out with that. And I always say, I absolutely will help you out with that. It's the same kind of work. And also that you touched on the digital side of things as well, which is really something I've been exploring more and more recently. And I find it fascinating because there's a whole other set of stressors that come with facing a screen. Mm-hmm. We're missing the human cues. We're missing a lot of our senses, right? When we're in the space, we can hear other things. We don't have the headphones in, right? We can smell, we can feel the temperature. It's a whole other part of speaking in public that also has its own stressors that come with it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you touched on both of those things. I always say, one of the first things that I always do when I'm working with my clients is the first thing we do is actually just have a conversation. And very often, we'll have a kind of spontaneous conversation, and I'll say to them at the end of the conversation, how did you feel about what we just did there? And they'll say, yeah, actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I say, you just gave a presentation in English. No, it wasn't rehearsed. No, it wasn't a written speech. Mm-hmm. But you just, especially for first-time clients, you just, sat in front of or stood in front of somebody that you didn't know. Whenever we have the conversation, I ask them about their work. So you just stood in front of somebody you didn't know. You talked about your work and you're feeling okay about it. Yeah. So let's see where the moment is, where the okay feeling starts to leave you and the stress starts to come in. And I'll tell you one thing, it always starts in the body. Always.
Oh my gosh, I agree with that, because one of the things that you said, the feeling is always the same. And I remember this, and I still do get a little bit like, stomach or butterflies and start shaking sometimes if I have to do a talk, or I have to, even just sometimes when I have to do a presentation. That feeling is there. it's exact same feeling. Doesn't matter what kind of platform you're on, doesn't matter what you're doing. The fact that you're standing there now, you have to become the expert. You have to talk. You have all these people looking at you, or in a virtual world, you've got all these eyes on you. The feeling is exactly the same. And another thing that you touched upon there as well is where people talk about themselves. Like you said, when you have that first conversation with your clients, when people talk about themselves, they immediately get comfortable because they're comfortable with the knowing factor that, hey, this is me, this is what I do, this is what I'm talking about. So immediately that kind of anxiety dissipates. But then when people stop talking about themselves, that anxiety kicks in again, because now they're again in an unfamiliar kind of situation. And I've experienced that so many times before as well. So I'm glad I'm not the only one.
You are, well, I mean, I'm sure you know the statistics, right? I mean, their studies have shown that fear of public speaking is the highest fear there, even over death.
Oh
People
my
are more,
gosh.
did you not know that?
I did not know that, no.
It sounds completely insane, but people are more afraid of speaking in public than they are of dying.
My goodness.
And I sat with that for a long time, and I tried to think, how could that be possible? And I realized something, and it's a bit macabre, to use a French word. It's a bit, but I realized that I said, how could that possibly be true? How could people be more afraid of speaking in public than they are of dying? And I realized that, as sad as it is, dying is certain. And almost the dictionary definition of speaking in public is uncertainty, right? And so I was also flabbergasted when I read that statistic, but I think that might be why, as upsetting, obviously, as dying is, there is a comfort in the certainty. And I think when we step into uncertainty is terrifying. Whether you're speaking in public or traveling to a new country or whatever it is, the thing for you. But I think uncertainty is the most scary thing.
I know. And I think that uncertainty, that stops so many people as well from just deciding to do this, deciding to do a video, to show up for their audience. And I work specifically with female entrepreneurs in order to help them attract clients by enhancing their visibility, which includes showing up on video, doing public speaking, if that's your gig, just getting yourself out there. But that uncertainty of what if nobody's going to respond? What if nobody's going to engage? What if I stumble over my words? All those kind of questions stops people from becoming more visible and getting themselves out there. So my question to you is, obviously everybody kind of goes now, okay, we recognize that fear. We know that there's something inside of me that's stopping me. How can they kind of work on that? And I wouldn't say stop the fear, because it's something that will always be niggling at us. I mean, still even now when I show up on camera, when I show up in front of an audience, I still get that niggly feeling of me, and my hands still shake, but that's normal, okay? That will never disappear. But what can we do in order to get more confident and start showing up?
Well, I always try and pinpoint with my clients, what do you care about? Why are you doing this? Like what? And sometimes it can be interesting, because sometimes we can spend a whole session just on that. Why do you want to do this webinar? What's the reason? Yeah, but why? Okay, but why is that important? And we really kind of and once you get to your true objective, the truth is extremely powerful. And so even if you stumble over your words or you forget your sentence mid-thought, if you have your truth, I often say that the truth is like an anchor. If you can tap into your truth, it will anchor you. So if you get lost, you just go, what's my truth? Why am I here? What do I want? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Because I want to empower people. I want to help people. I want to inform people. I want to share something. And so sometimes that truth remains the same, that sometimes it's a constant, and sometimes it changes with each different project. But that's always one of the places I really like to start, is tap into your truth. And when you said about like still feeling, having nerves and butterflies, I'm so glad you said that, because to be honest, if you don't have those things happening, it means you don't care about what you're doing. And so take it as a good sign. And nobody wants to look at it as a good sign. They think, oh, I'm deficient, or, oh, there's something wrong with me, and why can't I remain calm? What's the matter with me? And I say to my clients, I want you to be nervous. It's going to sound counterproductive, but I say, I want you to be nervous and for the end of your days. Okay. Because once you stop having, yes, we're going to decrease. We're going to take it from, panic to stress. You don't want to be panicked. You want to be a little stressed is okay. But I want you always to feel something, because if you don't, then you don't care about what you're doing. And then what's the point? I mean, if we don't care about what we're doing, then why are any of us here? Right?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that. I've got a lovely story. I read a book of somebody one day, and they used this example of them having a public speaking coach. And she said exactly the same thing, where she said she was a speaker and she always used to show up at schools and speak to young adults in school, teenagers. And she was always doing all these speaking events and, showing up. And she was always so nervous before she had to get up on that stage and talk to all these kids. And she was like, but these are kids. Why am I getting so nervous talking to kids? And then as the years progressed and as her business evolved, then a couple of days later, she went on stage again. And she was like, I'm not nervous. Why am I not nervous? She had a fluent speech. She presented everything to the children. And then she walked off the stage and she's like, why am I not nervous anymore doing this? And that's where reality kicked in. And she realized that she didn't have a passion for what she was doing anymore. She didn't want to work with the kids anymore, because now her business was starting to pivot and move in a direction where she was working with entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs. And that's where she realized, like, oh, that's where my passion is. My passion is completely moved in another direction. And because she didn't have those butterflies, those nerves anymore, she was like, something is telling me that it's time to change. It's time to move on. And that was so powerful. So I'm so glad you brought that in, because that story got stuck in the back of my head. And that made me realize nerves are okay, because it shows me that why I'm doing this, why I'm still showing up, I'm on the right path. But if those nerves stops, maybe that's where I need to move on.
Yeah. And even people that you would never imagine, people who speak regularly, still get those nerves. I mean, Steve Jobs would spend a minimum of 2 days preparing when he would speak. And that's just Steve Jobs. I mean, how often did Steve Jobs speak? He would open his mouth and everybody would be listening. But he still, because he was still connected to what he was doing, but he still had those nerves, right? And so he would say, okay, I got to prepare. I got to take care of this. But it still meant something to him. It didn't go away after, who knows? I mean, I don't know what the number is, but hundreds probably of times that he spoke throughout his career.
Yeah.
So, and that's a really powerful story. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and I like the fact that you brought that in, actually, preparation. Let's talk a little bit about preparing, because if you are to go and do a webinar, if you're going to go and do a video or actually stand in front of a crowd, how important is preparation? I'd love to hear it from your words.
Preparation is air in my world. Preparation is water. Preparation is oxygen. It is the without preparation, I hesitate to say this, but because I think it might be a bit controversial, but without preparation, I say don't bother showing up.
Yeah.
And I often get a lot of pushback on that. And the number one sort of point of contention that I get from people is, but I don't, especially in the webinar, digital, recorded projects, And they say, but I don't want to sound rehearsed. And I say, here's the thing about preparation. Preparation is not going to make you sound rehearsed. When was the last time you went to the theater, saw a ballet, watched a movie? Do you think those people didn't prepare? And did you look at them and go, wow, they're pretty stiff. They're so rehearsed. No, these people spent months. And not only is it preparation, it's repetition. They do it again and again and again. Even in a film where you don't see all the takes, right? They repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. So the two areas of pushback, the two areas where I get the most pushback is when I talk about preparation and when I'm very nice about it. But when I force my clients to rehearse and rehearse and again and again and again, and they say, but I've got it. And I say, again, because what happens is we talked earlier about certainty and uncertainty. Preparation and rehearsal are the gift of certainty. Can you ever have 100% certainty? Absolutely not. Nothing is certain in life, right? You know, if you're speaking in a room, the electricity could go out, or the electricity could go out while you're doing a webinar and everything could go black. I mean, there's no certainty there, but it's the closest we can get. Preparation and rehearsal is the closest you can get. And so if you tie everything together, that idea of public speaking being the biggest phobia of all time, in you know, I'm of course not a researcher or a scientist, but in my hypothesis, the reason being because it's so uncertain. How can we get you closer to certainty? That's how.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's something I want to add here as well, because just as an example, actually, I've got a webinar, a workshop, masterclass, whatever you want to call it, that I'm holding tonight online. And I've been preparing for this. I had my slides and I've been preparing and I've been repeating it, practicing it over and over again. And apart from just making sure that I know what I'm talking about, the reason why I practice is not to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but it's because I want to make sure that the content I'm delivering to the audience is there. and that's why I practice in particular as well, because I feel with all the experience I already have showing up in front of a camera, I'm comfortable with that. I don't need to practice that part anymore. But the reason why I practice and the reason why I keep on repeating it is because I want to make sure that the content I'm giving my audience is there. Because every time I go through the content, oh my gosh, can't tell you how many times I had to change that presentation because I go through something and then all of a sudden I'm going, oh, I need to talk about this. This is important because this links into this. And then I change my presentation because I want to make sure that the content and what I'm teaching the audience is not minimum. I don't want to give them the minimum. I always make sure that I take it up one level. And that's why I always go and practice my presentations and practice when I speak in front of an audience. When we were still able to go out, I used to have live workshops with a dear friend of mine, and I would stand in front of my mirror and I would talk through my presentation, and then I go, there's something that I need to bring in. I didn't think about that when I did my presentation. So I go back and amend my presentation, and then I go back in front of the mirror and I talk. And it's all about that engagement as well. So for me, it's about the audience. And I always say this as well. It's not about me, it's about the audience. And that's why I practice, because I want to show up and be the best part of me for them.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to give you a little tip that I use with my clients. So, and this would probably be when you're at the beginning of preparing something. So you've probably of course, for tonight, you've way past this point, right? But it's just a question. And I spend a lot of my time with my clients actually asking questions. I joke very often that, I ask hundreds of questions in a day, right? And the question that I always say to them is, when you put down that microphone, press that recording off button, or walk off that stage, what do you want to have shared? Mm-hmm. Make a list. What do you want to say? I want to say this. I want to say this. I want to make sure I tell them this, and I want to do this. And it's a great way to center yourself and really give also a form almost to your presentation. And it eliminates that fear of, oh, I wanted to tell them this and I didn't. Oh no. So I often take clients to the end of we also do another exercise, which is how do you want to feel at the end of this?
Yes.
What do you want to feel when you're done? But there's also a practical side to that, which is when you walk off the stage, what is the information that you want to have been shared so that you don't miss anything? And especially again, it's all of the little areas have their own nuances, right? So of course, if you're delivering a written speech, it's all there for you on the page. But if you're delivering content and especially when your ethos is connection and you having your personality shine through, and you don't have every single word written down, a really great tip for that is just to think, okay, what do I want to deliver? What do I want to share? What do I want to make sure that when they finish this experience, they know? And that can be really helpful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've actually made a note here while we're talking. It's like, I remember that for tonight.
Yes. It's also a great thing to review right before, just a quick review of, am I saying everything I want to say? Am I sharing everything I want to say? And sometimes you'll be like, oh, actually, I wanted to share this other thing. It's not in there. I forgot about that.
Yeah, no, it's a great tip to have as well. It's all starting with the end in mind, isn't it? And just work your way backwards and make sure that all plans and pans out. So let's talk a little bit about the virtual world, because yes, we're recording this virtually. Awesome. But this is also something where people feel like, and you've mentioned this before, you don't get the feedback from the audience because we're talking to a camera, and yes, I can see you there. So you and I face to face virtually, we can talk to each other. But this is something that is really hard for so many people because they don't get that feedback. I mean, if you're standing in front of your team and you're delivering a meeting, or if you're standing in front of the crowd, you can see the faces, you can see the feedback. And you and I tapped into something that was really interesting, and forgive me, but I'm going to bring this in, is about the difference between men and women and how they want to receive that feedback when they're standing and when they're talking to somebody. So if we can tap into that a little bit, but also talk about the virtual side of that feedback and that constant engagement. Can you give us a couple of little tips and talk that through with us?
Yes, absolutely. It is in many ways a sort of brave new world that we are in at the moment. And it is extremely difficult, as you said, to gauge the impact. Now, you can put, and smarter people than me do this, right? You can put elements in place so that you can gauge whether it's, depending on what kind of a presentation you're giving online. So whether it's some kind of engagement at the end, so you can kind of check the analytics, or you can check this, or you can check that, but you can't actually check people's faces, right? Mm-hmm. And so it is a whole different, not a whole different kind of preparation, but there is a different, you can't pick up on cues anymore, right? So I go back to, I have a couple of core principles, and I just, especially when dealing with digital presentations or videos, I always go back again to the truth, because it's going to sound really strange, but when you're when you're not having an experience like you and I are having right now, and it's really just you and the screen or you and the camera, you really only have yourself. So put yourself in the position of your client, of your ideal client, and think in their position, am I giving them the information that I want? Am I engaging them in the way that they want right now, because they might be in their pajamas, with their laptop in their lap in their bed. They're not in a conference room anymore. And it always comes back to the core principle of the truth. Am I speaking my truth, whatever that truth might be? And what's interesting is what you said about the difference between men and women, is that, especially when gauging feedback, what I've seen in my practice is that women, the way that women gauge whether they've had a successful speaking experience is whether there was connection.
Mm-hmm.
And these are sweeping generalizations, of course, right? I don't want to slight either species. But it's when men are gauging, did I have a successful speaking experience? Did I get my message across? They look inwardly.
Mm.
How did I feel? Did I feel intelligent? Did I feel commanding? Did I feel powerful? And I really think the ideal is to blend those two things together.
Yeah.
You know, I think you want to feel as a woman, I know I want to feel commanding and intelligent and all those wonderful things. And I want to feel like I'm making a connection.
Yes.
So, but it's definitely interesting in terms of when you filter it through men and women, that it's not the same experience. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. And I think the other thing is as well is, you know, people want to kind of know that if they had a great engagement, if people responded to what they were saying. And in a crowd, I mean, when you speak in public, that's different because you can see people nodding and you can see people going like, ah, or you can see people laughing when you said something. So you've got that engagement, you've got that feedback constantly. But when it's online, you don't have that. So you're like, am I going okay? It's very silent. I'm not getting anything. So that's where you just keep on pushing through. But I always talk about engagement online. And when you're doing a webinar, as an example, ask questions, get people to put comments in. So you can get that kind of feedback through that way. Another way of engaging with people, and this is something that I kind of done a lot more than I actually realized, and somebody pointed it out to me and I was like, oh, I'm so glad you told me that. It's when you talk on a camera, when you talk into the camera, the first thing you've got to do is look into the camera, okay? But that kind of idea is to lean in when you want to say something really important to grab people's attention, and when to lean back, and how to kind of use your emotions, use your energy in order to build that engagement. So those are just a couple of tips that I want to share with the audience as to how to build that engagement. But it is also very important, what Perdita said, is to kind of think about how you're going to combine those two, from feeling like you've made a connection, but also feeling like after you've done the speech, after you've done the webinar, do you feel that you feel intelligent, you've helped people? Do you feel that you've done the right thing? Combining those two is super powerful. And I think it is really important to kind of be in that kind of motion, be open-minded to it, and then obviously keep on pushing. Do another one, do another one, and do another one, because that's how your confidence grows.
Absolutely. And if I can just add one other element to that, which people often also resist, is to be okay with stillness and or silence. It's something I work with people a lot when we're face to face, but it's also true in the digital world as well. And I think that because of the nature of digital, it's just like it used to be on the radio, right? I mean, I remember when I was working on the radio, and it was, you know, the biggest mistake you could make was dead air, right? No dead air. You have to constantly be speaking, or in this case, constantly be moving. And I think there can be a lot of power in stillness and silence. It takes a lot of confidence. Mm-hmm. But if there is something that you really want to share, or something that you really want people to absorb, and as you said, the physical space, using your physical space is extremely important. And I think when you share it, like you said, you kind of lean in, and then you just kind of lean back and sit for a second and let people absorb. I know for myself, a few times when I've done webinars or calls with multiple people that were one person speaking, there have been a few times where they've almost gone too fast for me. Mm. And where I would have appreciated a few moments of either I'm going to repeat that again, that's how important I think it is, or I'm just going to let that sit with you for just a minute. and then we're going to carry on. So it's not being afraid of the silence or the stillness, I think, is also really important.
Oh my gosh, that was such a great tip, because that made me think immediately of some parts of what I've got to do tonight. And I was like, yep, I think I've got to repeat that sentence. And yes, I should leave a little bit of a blank space there. Just let it set in so people can go. And also, you've got to remember that some people will make notes. As you're talking through things, people will make notes. They can't write as fast as you talk. So you need to take that time, to give them that time in order to make their notes as well. So that is a great tip. And that's something I forgot about.
That's one of the cues that we can't pick up on when we're just looking into a camera.
Yeah.
When you're in a room, especially if you're giving, say, for example, you're doing an internal presentation, or maybe maybe you're giving a pitch or something, you can see what people are doing. Mm-hmm. So if you say something and all of a sudden every head is down and everyone is writing, you know to take a pause. But when you can't see people, so in a way you have to decide when those moments are going to be. You can't see them, you have to guess. But it's one of those cues that we don't have. Well, I don't want to say we don't have it anymore, but it's one of those cues that you don't have when you're working digitally.
Oh my gosh, this has been such an amazing conversation. Perdita, I can't thank you enough. I'm sure that the audience have made so many notes, and I've taken so many great golden nuggets away from what you've said here today. Because let's face it, if you're running a business, it's all about becoming visible. And if you want to become more visible, you need to get out of that comfort zone. You need to start showing up. You need to start talking, delivering content, and just be authentic and be yourself. So for each and every one of you who is listening, I hope that you really took to heart what Perdita said. I hope you got some great examples from what we've shared here with you today, so you can start implementing it, in yourself, in your business, and just go with it. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Your confidence doesn't grow overnight. It takes time. Just as you're going on your own journey, just as you're developing your business, your confidence needs to grow and develop itself. And it's an organic way of just building yourself up and building your business. But it's not going to happen unless you go out there and you just give it a go and you keep on pushing forward no matter what. So like we said, no more excuses. So honestly, Perdita, I just wanted to thank you again so much. Before we go, you have got an amazing guide for everyone. Why don't you tell us about the guide? And for those of you listening, to get this guide, the link will be in my show notes, so you can obviously go and click there and get it. But Perdita, I'd love for you to share what this guide is all about.
Well, I'm very excited to share. It's a relatively straightforward and quite clear guide, really, on how to have a successful speech or presentation, or like we've been talking about, a webinar, how to have the most successful experience that you can, and to be as effective and impactful as possible. And really what is infused throughout the guide is how to bring your personality through when you are promoting your business, which is something you just touched on. And that is the amount of times people have said to me, I just want to be myself in English. And I've even had native English speakers say, when I'm promoting my business, when I'm in front of the camera, I can't be myself. And so this is infused with all the kinds of ways that you can have your personality shine through and ultimately really enjoy whatever the speaking experience is you're having.
Oh, well, I'm definitely going to have a look as well. Thank you so much for making that available. So like I said, go down below in my show notes. The link is there. Go and grab it. And trust me, I think you're going to love it. And then if you have any ways that you would like to leave us a comment, by all means do so. Leave us a comment below this video, below this audio, and let us know if you had any takeaways that inspired you from this episode. Perdita, thank you again for your time, for being here and sharing your level of expertise and all these amazing tips. I've made a whole bunch of notes, so I'm just going to go back through them again. But I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for just being here and sharing everything with the audience. I really appreciate it.
It was my absolute pleasure. I loved every minute of it, and I'm going to look for you tonight in your webinar.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.